Thank you so much, Lavanya, and thank you so much, Dr. Lanzi and Dr. Stowe, and for the Mental Health Ambassadors. I'm really excited to be able to be here and just talk a little bit about the power of the peer. I have a PowerPoint presentation. I also want to just thank you, the audience, for being here and wanting to hear more about the power of the peer. I'm going to talk a lot about peers and peer education today. And then I have a brief overview of a very small handful of what peer education programs are on campus, but there are a lot of other ones. And so if you end up being inspired to get involved in peer education, there are lots of opportunities on this campus to do that. Let me go ahead and switch over to my PowerPoint presentation. So give me just one moment while I do that. All right, let's see if I can get us. All right, so hopefully we're on a full screen now. Are we there? Okay. All right. So power of the peer. Introduce myself just a little bit more. Again, my name is Mica Harrell. I'm the director for wellness promotion here at UAB. I have been a blazer for 10 months. I started in May. And so a little bit of a different way to start a new job and get to know the students on the campus. But I do really feel like I am building community here and finding lots of opportunities to engage with students. And so this is one of those. And so I'm really excited and I'm grateful to be able to be here today. Wellness promotion really focuses only on students. So it's student health promotion, and the areas in which we prioritize are areas that we know can impact students' abilities to be successful with their academics and in their life. And so interpersonal violence prevention is an area of focus for us, where we look at promoting healthy relationships, promoting healthy sexuality, as well as preventing things like sexual assault, relationship violence, stalking, harassment, those kinds of really uncomfortable and devastating experiences. Alcohol and other drug misuse prevention as well. We know we actually have a significant portion of students who don't drink on this campus. About a third of students don't drink, but for students who do drink, we know that without the right information and skills, the alcohol can interfere, and other drugs can interfere again in students' abilities to be successful. So we really just try and make sure we are providing good education on this for students who do drink, so that they can make informed decisions and choices. We're starting to do a little bit more with sexual health. We don't have as much developed with that, but we know that that's one of the number one things that's seen at our student health center are issues related to student sexual health. And that can also interfere in students' ability to focus on class and be successful. And then we also promote self-care. And in this time in particular, we've been just really trying to do a lot of work in promoting self-care, as all of us struggle to balance all of the things and all of the ways that things are so different. We know self-care is important all the time, but especially now. And then finally, we oversee the promoters of wellness, peer health educators. So the PAL peer educators, if you're not familiar with them, you will be, but hopefully by the end of today, and maybe you'll even be inspired to try and become one and work with us. So our peer educators are paraprofessional health educators. They go out there and talk about the issues that we focus on in our department with their peers. They have a national certification, and it is a paid on-campus position. And I'll talk a little bit more at the end about how to get involved with peer education through my department, and then some other opportunities. So, open-ended question, kind of an easy one. Drop your information in the chat if you want, or feel free to speak up. But what is a peer? How would you define a peer?
Well, I guess I will go ahead and say what I think a peer is. So, in my opinion, a peer is like somebody who is kind of a colleague or coworker, but in our college environment. So, it doesn't have to necessarily be a friend, but it can also be like a student who's in the same environment as us, or like colleagues or coworkers, basically.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
it looks like Ella said a peer is an individual in similar circumstances to you that you view as an equal.
Yes, exactly. Right. So a peer is someone, maybe we might think of equal standing, one that is of equal standing with another and belonging to the same societal group, especially based on age, grade, and status. And so we all have peers. Peers are something that I think that there's been a lot of work on in the business environment in terms of the peer-to-peer mentoring that can happen even in the business world, but we see this a lot in K through 12 and in college, this talk about the others' peers. And so peers are something that's really important, like I said, talked about in K through 12. When I say peer pressure, what is your reaction to this word? And it could be just a one-word reaction, it could be an emotion, it could be whatever it may be. So what is your reaction to the word peer pressure? All right, I'm not sure. I'm not hearing stuff. When I will tell you, when I hear the word peer pressure, I think about somebody pressuring someone in their peer group to do something that might be unhealthy. So that's, I think, how typically peer pressure has been being talked about. But we know that we can also peer pressure people to do something that might be healthy. You know, maybe you have a student who's really struggling and you're pressuring them to talk to their professor, you know, about it. And so peer pressure mostly has been focused on as a negative influence. But if we can influence people, we know that we can do that both positively and negatively.
And
And
Mica,
so,
real quick
yes,
before we go on. So we did get two people, Zoe and Tasia, in the chat about what they feel is their initial reaction to hearing the word peer pressure. So Tasia said that peer pressure is something that can make high school awful, and it's the first thing that came to her mind. And Zoe said the word stressful, which I think those are both very applicable.
I agree. Yeah. And that is really when we think about the influence or we think about peer pressure, we so often think about the negative and the unhealthy. And really, those types of situations in which we're being negatively influenced can be very overwhelming. And on the opposite side of that, we know though that if we have peers who are focusing on influencing us positively, that can also be overwhelming, but in a good way, right? And so that really is what our goal is when we talk about peers, is harnessing that influence, not for negative, but for positive. We also know that within peers, groups, you have maybe a larger group and a smaller group. So we have, for example, all UAB students, and then maybe we have UAB students who live together in the same residence hall, or UAB students who are in the same academic program, or who are part of a smaller student organization. And we know that the influence of those peers that students are closest with is going to have more impact on them than, say, the larger community. We also know that there are leaders within any group, and peer leaders really can help influence change within that peer group. And then peers can also change social norms. So they're kind of like this two-way influence, where larger groups can influence smaller groups and smaller groups can influence their individual members. But we know that individuals can also influence the smaller group, who then can also influence the larger group. So there's a lot of influence that comes from peer-based groups. And so they actually do have a lot of power. And with great power really comes great responsibility. And that's where we were talking earlier about that peer pressure. If we know that we have influence over those around us in our peer group, we can choose to harness that and be positive influence or be a negative influence. And so how do we use that power? What is a peer educator? So this is a more specific identity than just a peer. So what might a peer educator be? And I'll be patient and let folks think about that for a minute.
So I'll wait for some people to, if they want to insert something to the chat. But my opinion of what a peer educator is would be some peers who are like, making a change in society and kind of working to promote some sort of wellness promotion or health promotion or social change, or they're just kind of standing out in communities like that.
Definitely. Yep. Everything you said was spot on.
And Zoe said that she thinks the peer educator is someone that is on the same academic level as you and that has knowledge of specific topics and wants to share it with others.
Also spot on. Yep. So it is a trained student in a helping position who teaches or shares information that encourages healthy choices, values, and behaviors. So while we know that any peer can influence, peer educators really have identified that they want to be a positive influence and they want to influence their peers to have accurate information about things that are relevant for them and their peer group, to be able to make decisions that are healthy and to act in ways that are, again, healthy. So peer educators have taken basically an identity to acquire knowledge, to become kind of that paraprofessional expert, and to then use their influence in a positive way. And so it really is a really effective way to promote health and wellness or increase education or understanding of certain issues. Here are some of the peer education programs that I'm familiar. And like I said, I have only been here about 10 months, which sounds like a long time, but not when it's not on campus necessarily. And so I actually even want to ask folks if there are others. So the promoters of wellness are the ones that work with my department on the issues we've talked about. Mental health ambassadors are a peer education program. We have students who are working to help increase knowledge and understanding and resources for mental health. Student safe zone educators are looking at how to talk about how to promote diversity within sexual orientation and understanding and support of those communities. And then the free food for thought facilitators are also out of the student multicultural and diversity programs. And so these are all students who are working to educate other students. What are other peer educator groups at UAB that you're aware of? And Dr. Stowe, Dr. Lindsay, I'm not sure if you're also aware of others that I don't have listed on here.
I know there have been a few in the Division of Student Affairs. Now, I don't know how much COVID has affected some of those, but there was a group, I don't remember if you mentioned this or not, there was a group that used to meet with students in student leadership and involvement that would connect them with different ways to get involved on campus, kind of, what are your interests? What are the types of things that you're good at or you enjoy, or, what you want to do. And then they would help kind of connect them with a student org or events or department that would be a good fit. And then I know career services has peer folks that do a lot of the career support. Housing has the peer wellness ambassadors that do some good stuff. And I think there's one other group that I'm trying to remember. Quite a bit of peer education through student multicultural and diversity programs. So
Yes, I forgot to put, I had on here and it seems to have disappeared, but resident advisors are also peer educators in a big way, and the peer wellness ambassador. So we have a lot of opportunities to get involved with peer education on this campus. And if there's something you're passionate about that you want to educate and be a positive influence about, and it's not here, you can just become a registered student organization and start doing that work. And so there really is, this is a great place to be able to get involved with some of these programs and have that positive influence on each other. We know that peer education has multiple impacts. Really, it has an impact on the peer themselves. So we know that peers who do, let's say, mental health promotion, are going to make healthy choices related to supporting their own mental health, recognizing that if they need help, they can seek help and where to go. They tend to they're just more knowledgeable about these issues, so they have the opportunity to correct misperceptions based on mental health. They can make informed decisions. They have increased leadership, and they have a greater sense of community because they're aware of the community and what's in the community and the needs of the community. We also know that they have an impact on the campus and the greater community. So when you have peer education programs on a campus, the campus and the administration has an opportunity to recognize how important that student voice is and that influence that those students have. Again, correcting misperceptions of who we as Blazers are and what we as Blazers do, influencing those social norms. We see increases in resource utilization where we have programs that are promoting services and talking with other students about those services. And then they also have the opportunity to influence policy. So there's a lot of things that peer educators can do. I wanted to kind of just bring it home to mental health. How can a peer or peer educator impact mental health? And this could be a positive example or a negative example. So I was just going to ask you guys if you had thoughts on ways in which we can be influencing mental health just as a peer, but also as a peer educator.
So Herb said we could influence mental health by doing campus outreach, which is great because that's exactly what we do with mental health ambassadors, outreaching through social media and those different things. And I feel like it can be a positive thing when, students were able to see that during COVID, especially they were really touched by those different posts and events and things. So that's a positive thing. And then Tasia said that it can impact mental health by decreasing stigma.
Absolutely. Yes. And so those are both things that the mental health ambassadors are doing, right? And so it's a great example for how peer educators can positively, or peers can positively impact mental health. And so it's harnessing that power to be that positive influence. And we probably see that more peers then can be supportive of each other. They can be understanding of themselves if they are struggling, and hopefully also know where to go for services, because there's a whole peer culture created around understanding and being supportive of this issue. If you're interested in becoming a peer educator, we offer a training. And so our department offers a course called Wellness Promotion Peer Educator, CHHS 426. It's a 3-credit-hour course. It teaches skills for peer education. So there's lots of skills related to peer education. One of those is how to not be a passive, how to not be a bystander, but how to be someone who's active and who intervenes when they see someone who needs intervention, who needs information, who needs whatever it may be. So it teaches different skills for peer education. We also, as part of the class, offer the National Certified Peer Education Credential. And so that's a credential that can go on your resume. There's a strong focus of self-care on the class. We know that in order to positively influence people in a healthy way, we ourselves also have to be able to be healthy and to have our own self-care taken care of. And then we teach in-depth knowledge that's relevant to college life, and in particular, the issues that my department focuses on. once a student takes that class, they can leave, they can have their national peer education credential, and they can put that on their resume. They could go and become a part of another peer education group. They could start their own peer education group, but they also can, at that point, become eligible to apply to work with our department and become a promoter of wellness. And what our peer educators do is they develop programs, outreach, and events so that they're talking with their peers, they're figuring out the right ways to talk about this information, and they contribute to a healthy campus culture. They also have leadership development and career readiness. We do a lot of mentorship with our peer educators to make sure that they are building leadership skills so that they're effective beyond being a peer educator, but also as a peer educator. And then they're getting a lot of mentorship and professional development that really, I think, will set them apart when they go to apply for their next professional full-time job. And then gain transferable skills, like being able to talk with somebody and just have a conversation with them, presenting, how to develop a workshop. There's a lot of transferable skills that really are good for anything. And especially, we have a lot of health students here. These are excellent skills for folks in the health care industry and in the health field. And so I wanted to mention that in case you want to work with us. Again, the class can be taken as an elective, and it really is a fun class too. Even on Zoom, I think it has been fun. But hopefully not, because in fall, we plan to have this in person. So if you have room for an elective in your schedule, I hope that you'll enroll and we'll get to have an opportunity to interact with you. I really think we're probably at time, pretty close to time. And so it was a quick overview. I just wanted to thank you, ask if there's any questions that you might have or thoughts that you have about how peers and peer education could play a role in your life.
Well, thank you so much, Mica, for taking the time out of your busy day and while you're doing all these positive things on campus to present to us and help promote this. And hopefully more people will also join in on this movement of, peer educators. And we've got Zoe and Tasia saying thank you as well, and Ella and Zeal. So does anyone have any questions for Mica before we end? And Dua as well. And Elijah. Everyone. Well, thank you. I really appreciate you guys being here and just kind of having a little bit more in-depth look at what the importance and the power of the peer.
Thank you. Thank you, Lavanya, for organizing everybody. And it's good to see everybody. I hope y'all have a great weekend.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you. All right.